Hajime no Ippo has had a ton of great fights so far, but Ippo versus Volg has hands down been the best one yet. In the last episode, he fought against Saiki, and with the stroke of luck, he was able to advance into the finals of the A-class tournament. If he's able to win his match in the finals, he's given the opportunity to challenge Date to become the Japan champion. We pick up right after the fight with Saiki. Ippo's back in his room, laying down with a towel over his head when he hears the door open and he's wondering if it's Gramps walking in, but turns out it was Saiki. He's in here saying that he's sorry for the intrusion, but he just wants to know one thing. How did Ippo know exactly where he was inside the ring? He understands the basic logic of it, right? Ippo's right side was blinded, so if he couldn't see Saiki, then he has to be somewhere on his right side, so he just swung. But Saiki says he made sure to keep his rhythm consistent enough to not get thrown out of whack and not get hit by some lucky punch. He's honestly curious on how Ippo was able to hit him, but Ippo explains that it was exactly because his rhythm was so consistent and so precise that he was able to predict it and take advantage. He explains that that moment where he had accidentally leant on him was able to give him enough insight, knowing that that was the position where he would be in the next round and the next encounters. So Ippo was able to know where Saiki was going to be before he even got there. Saiki's just like, man, well, I guess you got the best of me this time. He just congratulates Ippo on the win and decides to make his leave. Then my mans comes in. Now, I done got a decent amount of comments in the last video talking about me calling Umezawa Doodle Shirt, just because that's how I normally called him, right? I'm just used to that. A lot of people were saying after his glow up, which he did glow up, I respect it, but a lot of people were saying that he's grown past the Doodle Shirt phase. He's not King Doodle Shirt no more. He's Umezawa. And I'm gonna be honest, I agree, right? I honestly didn't expect him to boss up in this way and continue to be a recurring character, so I got nothing but respect for him. He done made it out the mud into what he is now, Ippo's right hand man, his best friend, and the #1 most consistent supporter in the crowd. And while doing research for this script, I had seen some people online saying that Umezawa is a reference to the author himself. So that's a fire dynamic. Shout out to bro, shout out to my mans, I respect him. But anyways, back to the story. So King Doodle Shirt walks in, wondering if it's even okay for Ippo to be sitting up right now since he just finished fighting and took a good bit of damage. He's saying that he's surprised Ippo didn't fall back during that one specific moment, as Ippo calls back to what Doodle Shirt has said, saying that falling would have been bad PR for the store since the store name is right on Ippo's shorts. He's saying that he felt the pressure and the stress not to fall and deface the name of his family store. And Doodle Shirt is honestly surprised that he took that literally. He wasn't telling Ippo that he can't fall down or he's gonna deface the name of the store. It was all just a joke, but with Ippo's innocence and just overall purity as a person, he took it literally and it actually ended up working out for him. Doodle Shirt really doesn't have much else to say except for congratulations. Fast forward a little bit and we get to see Ippo all dressed and ready to see the second match in the featherweights A-class tournament. He's linking up with Barf Boy and Unk, then they eventually run into Date as he's wondering if he watched the match. Date says that he did, calling it ridiculous how it played out in Ippo's favor as always, but he says congratulations regardless. Ippo's trying to watch this next match in order to scout out his next opponent. The winner of said match is going to be who Ippo has to face in the finals, so this is his chance to pay attention and get some type of intel. The two people in the ring right now are the former amateur world champion, Volg, and on the other side is the current second ranked fighter in the featherweight class, Suzuki. This is the same person that had challenged Date not too long ago, but he had completely annihilated him, holding on to his first place ranking. But he's back trying to win this tournament and earn himself another chance at the title. Both Unk and Date point out that Suzuki's age is getting up there, so he's fired up knowing that this very well may be his last chance to make a push for #1. But they're also talking about Volg, hearing rumors that people call him the White Fang. Date personally wants to see how this wolf and his White Fang boxes. As the bell rings, we get to see things from Suzuki's point of view. He's looking at Volg and is saying that he's got a real basic pose, remembering that he is the amateur world champion, so it makes sense that he does things in a very textbook manner. Even Date is calling out how orthodox Volg's style seems to be. At the moment, he's keeping all of his weight on his back foot, waiting for an opportunity to counter when Suzuki takes the initiative and comes out swinging. Volg is smoothly dodging everything as he's getting pushed back by Suzuki's barrage, but is able to move back in for a couple jabs to counter Suzuki's. He's pretty surprised at how heavy these jabs are, but with his experience, he's more than ready for a situation like this. So he switches up his fighting style, saying that you're not gonna find moves like these in the typical textbook fighting scenarios, so he's thinking that Volg's not gonna be ready for it. He gets in real close, and Ippo and Unk is saying that he's using his shoulder and pressing in to smother Volg's technique. He's pressing Volg hard and is applying a crazy amount of pressure as he finally lands a blow. Ippo is pretty impressed with Suzuki's style and how he's able to apply pressure so seamlessly, but Date says he's only this effective because he's so reckless. He's just throwing himself in there, but he says that he feels like something is off. He points out that Volg's corner man hasn't budged an inch since they started, even though it seems as if Volg's in trouble right now. Suzuki notices that Volg has shifted his foot and put the weight on his front leg, basically indicating that he wants to start infighting. This is what Suzuki wanted the entire time. Infighting is what he's best at. As they trade punches, they begin infighting back and forth as the commentators are wondering who's gonna outpunch the other. They're continuing to go on, and Suzuki's landing his punches, but Volg is landing them more. Suzuki's confused as to how he's able to punch so smoothly after taking all these hits already, but then he finally realizes at the same time that both Unk and Date do, Volg is truly an infighter. After seeing him this close up, Suzuki says that Volg looks like a totally different person. He's been applying pressure this entire time, even forcing Suzuki to step back as he realizes that he's in a real bad state right now. He knows he's got a guard, but as soon as Volg realized that Suzuki was trying to retreat, he began applying even more pressure, taking advantage of the position that Suzuki found himself in. He's landing more and more hits, but suddenly the ref gets in the way, calling that it's a standing knockdown. Suzuki's up against the ropes, but he's not conscious anymore. But Volg pushes the ref out of the way, sending another punch, landing square in Suzuki's face. Suzuki's trainer is going crazy at this point. He's been trying to tell Volg to stop, but finally he throws in the towel, but even that wasn't enough to stop Volg. He throws his final punch, sending Suzuki straight to the mat. As his trainer runs up, he's telling everybody to call an ambulance, get a stretcher, he needs immediate medical attention. He's obviously upset at Volg for continuing to fight after the ring, after the ref called it off, and even after the towel, but as he looks at Volg, he just sees this intense look in his eye, staring on. Barf Boy points out that Volg was able to defeat Suzuki even faster than Date did. As Ippo looks on, he realized that Volg didn't use any flashy or fancy techniques to make it all the way to the amateur world title. He was able to conquer that and make it this high up in Japan's rankings through sheer force. Volg's trainer walks up and taps him on the shoulder, finally getting him out of combat mode as he just wipes blood off his mouth and they begin to make their leave. But Ippo notices that even though he just won the fight, Volg hasn't smiled once. He actually looks more unhappy than anything. Unk points out that this edge while he fights and his violent punches are like a wolf and its fangs. Ippo's realizing that he's got to go up against Volg next. We fast forward to Kimura's fight next, and he ends up winning by decision, but Unk's not really too impressed. He thinks that Kimura should have knocked him out, but regardless, he was able to win this first round. In Aoki's fight, we get to see he's completely getting whooped on, bruh. And this time, Unk's just having a blast. Inside the ring, Aoki knows that he's about to lose, so he decides to pull out his special move. He says that he wanted to wait until the finals to pull this one out, but at this rate, he has no choice. He ducks down, and in the crowd, nobody knows what he's about to do. Then, he finally does his special move, this funky little frog jump, hitting his opponent square in the chin, and he actually manages to secure the dub. After the fight, Gramps is telling all three of them to get some rest, saying that they did a good job on their first rounds, but the tournament is nowhere near over. Aoki's feeling pretty good about his win, but Kimura and Ippo are thinking about their next opponents and are kind of stressing out about it. Remember, Kimura's got a fight against Mashiba coming up if he's able to win this next fight, and Ippo has to fight Volg. Seeing that the mood is down, Unk steps into his role as the quote-unquote ultimate role model and decides to take all three of them out to go have some fun. They end up at this karaoke spot, and once they make it inside the booth, he calls out that they're gonna start in order from the youngest to the oldest. Ippo's already getting nervous because he's never done this type of thing. He doesn't want to go up first, but then he realizes he's not the youngest anymore. He actually has a junior who's underneath him, Barf Boy. As Barf Boy goes up and sings his song, he actually does a pretty solid job. They're all impressed and are all clapping for him when Unk says after hearing this, he's been musically inspired to go and do his song. So he cuts the line and takes the mic, instantly telling Aoki to put on song 985. Ippo is shocked because Unk already knew this song when he didn't even look inside the booklet. But Kimura says that this is his quote-unquote special song. As we look towards the TV, we see that the song that he chose was quote-unquote the champion. Ippo thinks it's so cool that the actual champion is gonna sing the song The Champion, and as he takes a deep breath, he locks in, ready to sing the song. But as he starts singing, Ippo's realizing that this man singing is trash. Aoki and Kimura are saying that they just gotta thug through it for a little bit and wait until the song is over. But as they look at the TV to see the lyric video, they see Hajime from before. He's acting in this music video as a little part-time gig to make a little bit of money, and Aoki's jealous that he had gotten paid to make these type of scenes. He said he would die for a job like this. We already seen how Aoki got in the last episode. This man is a certified freak. Y'all already know he would go crazy to do a scene like this. But as Unk finishes up his song, he's like, yeah, thank you. But notices everybody standing up. They're all looking at the TV, worried about Hajime and focusing on the video, but he's thinking that he just got a standing ovation. So putting two and two together, he's realizing that they must be asking for an encore. As we fast forward a little bit, we see that this is Unk's like 5th or 6th time doing this same song over and over, and they realize somebody's gotta stop him or else he's gonna be on this all night. As they're looking at the TV, once again, they're shocked that they casted somebody who had lost in the tournament instead of the actual champion himself to play as the champion in the song. That just don't make any sense. But looking at the belt, Kimura says that he just loved to wrap it around them just once, and they all get lost in the image of the belt. Barf Boy's realizing that they've all been stressed because they're all within reach to this champion status. The whole gang's been working hard and have been trying their best to make a push for it, and just from all this built up tension, Aoki, Kimura, and eventually Ippo go up there and start singing this song alongside Unk. They end up doing this over and over, and Barf Boy's tired of it, saying that they've been doing this for like an hour straight. As they finally make their leave, Unk's saying that it's time for party number 2 over at his house. Kimura's saying that he wants to review a little bit of his tape from the fight today, and overall, they're all just talking about everybody's individual moves. Aoki's got this little frog jump that he did, Kimura's got his sharp left counter, and as Ippo's saying how impressed he is, Barf Boy calls all of Ippo's moves deadly, specifically pointing out his left liver blow, calling it a work of art. As he tries his best to imitate it, he knows that he didn't really do it right, so Ippo starts giving him some pointers. As he takes off his bag, he locks in and steps forward with his left, pivoting and twisting his hip all at the same time. Barf Boy is just stunned watching Ippo go through this punch up close, but he ends up shattering the machine right outside the spot with his punch, as they all have to run and regroup somewhere else. As they finally do, Barf Boy says that it's about time for him to head home since he's got school tomorrow, and says that he appreciates them for hanging out with them. He's never gotten to goof around with friends like this before, so he honestly does appreciate it. Unk's like, friend? Who you calling your friend? But Ippo shuts him up, saying that, of course, it's no problem. At this point, he's been going through the mud with them, so they're family. it's really no big deal. As Barf Boy runs off, he tells them goodnight and bows, saying thank you all for everything. Kimura's wondering why he's talking like this, quote unquote, thank you for everything. We just went out and spent a few hours doing some karaoke. He's talking as if he was never gonna see him again. But Unk says that he has something to tell them. He was told to keep quiet about it, but he figures that now it's not gonna be a huge problem. But Barf Boy is quitting Kamogawa Gym. We get a view over at Barf Boy's apartment, and his mom is asking him if this is really okay. Turns out Barf Boy and his mom are moving once again, and she's pointing out how happy he's been ever since we came to this location. She's never seen him this happy before, and honestly, she feels bad for having to make a move once again. Thinking about everybody at Kamogawa Gym, he says that he's been able to really meet some amazing people ever since he's got here, and the memories that he's made with those people are his treasures from this town. His mom is on the verge of tears at this point and is just apologizing, saying that she brings him nothing but despair. Barf Boy says that's not the case. He says that he's grown as a person ever since coming here, and now he feels like regardless of wherever he goes, he'll be okay. The treasures, these memories that he's learned from Kamogawa Gym have truly changed his life. Once Ippo heard the news, he's calling Unk shallow for not telling anybody. They didn't even get to say their proper goodbyes, and at this point, it's hitting Ippo the hardest because them two were the closest. They had spent the most time together. I mean, that was his junior after all. After thinking for a little bit, Kimura asks Unk if it's time, and Unk says that it is. Fast forward to the next day at Kamogawa Gym, and Barf Boy saying his byes to Yagi and Gramps, thanking them for everything that they've done for him over these past couple of months. But Yagi tells Barf Boy that the rest of the gang is waiting for him downstairs in the ring. Barf Boy's kind of confused because he knows that they're not supposed to be in the gym today. They're supposed to be at home resting because of all the fights, but Yagi tells him that they're down there for his send-off party. He's honored that he's getting something like this from them, so he hurries downstairs telling everybody that he's here and that he's sorry for making them wait. Everybody is there inside the ring, all with gloves on, telling bro to hurry up and get ready. They're already warmed up and good to go. He's wondering if he's at the right place, if this is the send-off party, and they're saying that it is. It's just the special Kamogawa way. Everybody but Ippo, since he took too much damage, is gonna take turns sparring Barf Boy, and of course he's nervous, but he's sure that this is gonna be a great memory that he'll never forget. First up is Unk. Of course, when matched up with Unk in the ring, there's nothing that Barf Boy could do. Ippo's just in his corner telling him to try his best to stay alive. But after 2 seconds, he gets sent flying right back into the corner. He's already out. Now, it's Aoki's turn. Ippo says that he actually can give some advice in order to try and hopefully do better against Aoki, as he's telling Barf Boy to take the initiative and go swinging in first. So as he does, Aoki just barely dodges the first punch, and Ippo's telling Barf Boy to continue exchanging punches. But Aoki starts doing these funky little movements. Barf Boy doesn't know what's going on, but out of nowhere ends up getting double punched with both fists at the same time, getting sent straight to the ground. Now it's finally Kimura's turn, and Ippo's telling him that Kimura's a very orthodox fighter. As long as you can stop him from gaining his distance, you should be able to do well. So the game plan is to just stay as close as possible. As Barf Boy dashes in, he manages to stay toe-to-toe with Kimura, and Ippo's pretty impressed with all the hard work that he's put in, because what they're seeing in the ring now is a direct result from his training. As Kimura manages to send a counter with his right, Barf Boy gets pushed back, but he won't fall. Ippo's thinking back to the talks that they had before, where Barf Boy explained how he was always an easy target for bullies and could never really stand up for himself, and seeing the growth now, Ippo couldn't be more proud. They're still in the ring fighting, and Ippo can tell that if he could just step in just a little bit further, he'd be able to start landing hits on Kimura. He's almost there, but Kimura ends up getting the best of him and knocks him down too. They're all pretty impressed with how he performed, saying that his base level strength is now up to par. He's really holding his own. But as soon as they all thought they were done, Ippo steps into the ring with some gloves on. He wasn't supposed to do any sparring since he just fought last night and took a lot of damage, but he says that he doesn't want to miss out on this and wants to be a part of the memory with Barf Boy too. He says that one round is the least that he could do, but he gives Barf Boy a warning that he's gonna go 100%. As they get in their corners, Aoki, Kimura, and Unk are all talking about Ippo, telling Barf Boy all of Ippo's pros and cons, saying that he'll be tired from the last fight with Psyche, whoop whoop whoop, and Unk's like, man, kill him if you have to. We'll tell the cops it was an accident. They all want to see Barf Boy win this match, and Barf Boy's locked in, realizing that this is going to be his last sparring session with Ippo, knowing that he's got to give it his all and show him everything that he's learned. As the bell rings, he dashes in, but Ippo's already there. The gang realizes that Ippo really is going serious, using all the strength that he has, and as he lands his first jab, Barf Boy is sent flying back, amazed that this is what one of Ippo's real jabs feels like. Barf Boy's throwing punches while Ippo's right there in his face, but still can't land anything. Ippo finally ducks under one of Barf Boy's jabs as he steps in with his left, and Barf Boy immediately knows what's coming. This is his patented left liver blow, the same one that Barf Boy was talking about earlier. He's forcing himself to not look away, realizing that this is the ultimate lesson that he could get from Ippo, his senior, his teacher. And as the punch lands, his mouth guard gets knocked out and instantly Barf Boy falls. He's amazed at the actual destructive power that Ippo has, never having experienced it at anything even close to full strength. And Ippo's wondering if Barf Boy is okay. He's like, yeah, I think so. And Aoki already knew what was about to happen, bringing in a bucket so that he don't get his barf all over the ring. At one point, they were thinking about upgrading him from his Barf Boy nickname to his real name, but after this, it's just gotta stick. As he goes back into the shower, he's feeling all the bumps and bruises from the sessions, realizing that each one of them is from a different member of the gang. He says that he'll never, ever forget this moment, and fast forward to outside the gym, they're all sending him off and he's saying his goodbyes. As he runs off, Ippo wishes that Barf Boy will continue boxing, saying that if he does, then someday they might just be able to meet again. The next thing that we see is Aoki, Kimura, and Ippo doing some road work as they're just running on and on. Aoki and Kimura stop for a little break, but Ippo's still there practicing his punching, practicing his form. He's giving them some extra encouragement, telling them that they gotta do their best with the semifinals coming up soon. And they're just realizing how much of a monster Ippo really is. He seems to have unlimited stamina. They're kind of comparing him to themselves and even to Unk. While both Unk and Ippo have undefeated records, they kind of give off different impressions. When they look at Takamura, they see his natural talent when it comes to boxing, but Ippo was made purely out of hard work. They're wondering if already, within the short amount of time that Ippo's been boxing, he's already surpassed them. But just thinking about it for a second, they don't want to accept it. They're not going to let themselves be outworked by their junior. They know that all they have is 2 more matches left within this tournament, so they lock back in, going back for even more road work and even end up surpassing Ippo. Later that night, they head over to Unk's place and he's wondering what they're all doing here. Turns out they all pulled up to watch some film. Unk's got the TV and a bunch of matches on tape, so they pulled up to see him. And as Ippo wants to check out a specific fighter, Unk starts trying to figure out where he put those tapes at. He's searching all over the place and eventually he finds it, but it's surrounded by a bunch of dirty magazines, dirty films, all type of stuff, when they even see the Japan champion belt buried underneath all of that as well. They're wondering how could he, since the Japan title is such an accomplishment, but Unk says his only focus is the world title. He could care less about this belt. Aoki's like, damn. And here we are giving it our all just to try and get this belt for ourselves. Unk's like, well, I mean, if y'all want it that bad, then I can go to have mine. And at just the thought of it, Aoki's freaking out, but Unk was just playing the whole time. He's not about to give them no belt for not putting in the work. Aoki ends up heading out and so does Kimura. So at this point, it's just Unk and Ippo. They're talking about Aoki and Kimura and their overall mentality going into these upcoming semifinals matches, and Unk's giving Ippo a little bit of insight to the situation in general. Turns out Aoki and Kimura have been boxing for about 4 years. He says that it's taken them this long just to get this far, and they're feeling stressed out because they know if they lose this one, they're not going to have the opportunity to go for another title match for at least another year. Unk understands the pressure that they're under and realizes that it's got them so freaked out right now that they can't even sleep at night. And due to not getting proper rest that they need, that also affects their training, and it creates this whole negative cycle of bad anxiety leading to bad performance, which leads to bad anxiety, and it just continues on with seemingly no end. Unk's telling Ippo that his typical advice of, oh, make sure that you give it your all and try your best, doesn't really help in situations like these because they're pretty much empty words, even if they are said with pure and good intentions. The next day at Kamogawa Gym, Gramps walks in to seeing Ippo fighting completely out of form. He's in the ring with Kimura, who suddenly tagged out for Aoki. And as Ippo takes a punch, Aoki's wondering if he wants to go ahead and take a rest for a little while. He says that Ippo's been tag fighting him and Kimura for 8 rounds straight, and Ippo's saying that he could still keep going, but Aoki's not too sure. He's like, I mean, I appreciate the thought and you trying to help us out, but if you're not really at full level, then what's the point? But Unk from the sidelines is saying that this is how he wants to fight, so y'all might as well just go ahead and fight him. Unless y'all feel like y'all in the position to worry about others right now. I mean, if y'all really think y'all nice like that, then go ahead and relax. Just hearing them talk like that kind of pisses Aoki and Kimura off, so they get right back into fighting and just going crazy on Ippo. Turns out that last night, even after Unk had went to sleep, Ippo was there studying the tapes of Aoki and Kimura's upcoming opponent for their next round. So the reason that he was fighting all out of form, it was because he was imitating their opponents in order to help them out. We see that later that night, after the sparring, Aoki and Kimura are talking and they're saying that it turns out the training with Ippo did actually help. They feel like they've done everything that they could to get prepared, so now all they truly have to do is try their best. So we fast forward to Aoki's match, and of course Ippo and Unk are in the crowd watching as both Aoki and his opponent are mean mugging each other back and forth. We get to hear the crowd, and Aoki's gotten some notoriety for his frog punch from the last fight. They're calling him Frogman, Froggy Boy, woo woo whoop, so that's low-key turned out to be his nickname. As the bell rings, we don't get to see too much action. We fast forward to round number 4. They're both feeling gassed at this point, and turns out they're just about even when it comes to points. Aoki knows that they're close in points, so he needs to get a leg up now while he still can take the lead. He dives in and ducks underneath to do his patented frog punch, but gets flattened out immediately before he could even jump and truly send it off. Turns out this little funky frog punch isn't really that effective after all. It puts him in terrible form and he can't even brace for any type of impact. So he had gotten knocked straight to the ground while Unk and Ippo are in the crowd rooting for him. They're telling him to get back up and keep pushing, use all of his strength, and that's exactly what he does. As he gets back on too, they go back to fighting and Aoki ducks down once again, but this time he fakes the frog punch, ducking off to the side and lands a clean hit on his opponent, knocking him down. But his opponent is able to get back up and they get back to slugging at it. After a while, Aoki ends up taking a heavy right and ends up falling. But this time, before he's able to get back up, the ref calls it off and Ippo's just shocked, realizing that in just an instant, Aoki really lost. Unk gives him some props for what he was able to do since his opponent was just way out of his league. But unfortunately, he couldn't catch the dub. We fast forward to Kimura's match and he's in a similar position. They're tied up on points as the clock ends up running out when the ref comes in to call the ending. He says it's a draw. Now, in a tournament setting like this, a fight can't end in a draw since somebody needs to win and move on to the finals match. so they go ahead and start their overtime round. Ippo's trying his best to hype Kimura up, but Unk knows that his opponent is just one notch up in terms of both speed and power. Kimura had to give it his all just to get to this point, but going into overtime, he's completely gassed out. He's in the ring, feeling the pressure, and can't even move his body as he takes this final punch and falls over, losing his semi-final match as well. Unk's explaining that he had already used up every ounce of his energy, so he just couldn't make it happen in overtime. Ippo's realizing that either of them could have won, both Aoki and Kimura. He's upset that they trained so hard just to end up in defeat. Unk is realizing that Ippo's not used to seeing family lose like this, so this is catching him off guard, but he says in boxing, there can only be one winner. Both sides practice, train, and prepare for the moment, but unfortunately, somebody's got to lose. Ippo just looks down after the match, and Unk wants to go down and talk to them, but Ippo doesn't know what he's gonna say. After a match like this, Unk tells him that there's only one thing that you really can say. The most that you could tell them is, you're a failure. You an embarrassment. You asked for this. You ain't trained hard enough. Ippo obviously isn't gonna say all of that. He just looks down, and as they head into the locker room, they're waiting for Aoki and Kimura to come out. As they finally do, they seem to be in pretty decent spirits, especially coming after a loss. Ippo's just in the background, looking down, trying not to say anything because he's just uncomfortable in his position. And even when he does try and say something, he's fumbling over his words. Kimura's telling him that he doesn't have to tiptoe around them. It's not the biggest deal in the world. They've both lost matches before, and while it's unfortunate, it's part of the game. It's what they sign up for, as they just say that it happens. The both of them are pretty tired and are gonna head back to the crib, and Unk tells them that honestly, even though it was a loss, it was some of y'all most impressive fights to this day. They're realizing how weak that sounds, that their most impressive fight to this day ended up in a loss, but Ippo is saying that it really was a good fight. Kimura walks up to him and tells him that Ippo's fight is coming up next. He's got to focus and make sure that he wins, because the more that Ippo goes on and continues to win, the more it inspires them to stay competitive and keep on fighting for their goals as well. As Aoki and Kimura walk off, Gramps is telling Ippo that this isn't their first time losing, but it's still such a weird feeling that nobody can ever get used to. They were smiling and trying to keep a decent face on, but in all honesty, they were embarrassed. Gramps says it's up to Ippo how he responds to their feelings and their hopes and dreams being put into him. The next time we see Ippo, he's solo this time, but training twice as hard as before. Just last night, he had gotten all hyped up about it and rewatched Volg's fight over and over, but still, he can't find an opening for some type of breakthrough. He doesn't know how he's gonna win. Back at Kamogawa, Ippo's talking to Yagi, and turns out that Gramps isn't in the office today. Yagi tells him he's out at some type of meeting with Volg's chief and trainer, Ramuda. But just as they're talking about him, he walks in through the door and just has this death stare on his face. Ippo starts walking up and is talking about the fight with Volg, saying that he doesn't know exactly how he's gonna find a breakthrough. But as Ippo continues to talk and talk and talk, Gramps is getting more and more upset. Out of nowhere, Gramps just starts whooping on this man, saying that it's all his fault for being the way that he is, and he's going on and on and on, while everybody's trying to figure out what happened during that meeting. Gramps explains that Ramuda, Volg's trainer, was going on and on about Japanese fighters and actually praising their fighting style so much that it made Gramps sick, because even though he was given all of this praise, he was saying it all under the assumption that it wouldn't matter. He's confident that Volg would be able to beat them all. We get a flashback to their meeting, and Ramuda's talking to Gramps about the Japanese fighting spirit. It's a very common topic, and he says it's common for Japanese trainers to use the words like fighting spirit, willpower, effort when talking about boxing, but Ramuda says that's all in compensation for their lack of skill. He says this focus on effort, willpower, and fighting through injuries is part of the reason that so many Japanese boxers break down and so many great young talents go to waste. Gramps is wondering if he's trying to say that the style of coaching and fighting is wrong, but Ramuda is saying it's not exactly that. He just says that honestly, he can't think of one Japanese boxer who could defeat Volg. Now back in the present, Gramps is saying that it's been a long time since anything has pissed him off that bad. Not only was he disrespected, but the entire Japanese boxing scene as a whole. But the worst part is that the things that Ramuda was saying about Japanese fighters are true. Gramps couldn't say anything in defense, as he just looks up at Ippo, telling him that they're gonna win this fight versus Volg no matter what. And in order to do that, he's gonna teach him a new move, a new weapon, specifically for this fight. Instantly, he tells Ippo to start hitting some squats. Gramps is telling Ippo to thrust his hands up with enough force and momentum in order to jump with it, as he tells Ippo to do about 200 of these as he starts heading back to his office immediately. Ippo's like, well, what about this new punch, this new weapon? But Gramps says he just taught it to him. Ippo has decent leg muscles, but Gramps says that they're still a little bit too stiff. He says that Ippo must become a gazelle. If he develops flexible enough muscles, it'll naturally give way for a new punch to arise. Gramps says unless he's reading it all wrong, this is going to be the only way to defeat Volg. Ippo isn't sure exactly what's going on, but he trusts Gramps enough, believing in his tactics and what he's going to teach him, knowing that it'll be amazing. We fast forward to the next week, and Aoki, Kimura, and Unk all pull up to this public pool. Apparently, they talk with Ippo's mom, and turns out he's been coming here every day for the past week. We see that inside the pool, Ippo's here doing his squats. As the gang sneaks up on them, they begin talking, and Ippo's explaining that he was trying to figure out ways to make his muscles more flexible. And the more he read across all these books, he figured out that swimmers have the most flexible muscles across all athletes. So he decided to do his squats that Gramps had assigned him inside the pool. At first thought, Aoki and Kimura are thinking that the water would make the squats go easier if anything. Since your body floats, you have that extra support, but as they jump in and start hitting the squats, they realize it's way more difficult than doing squats on dry land. And after the first round of 200 squats, Aoki and Kimura are completely cooked. Unk is realizing that the resistance of the water is the reason that it's so much more difficult. It puts your muscles under constant use. He says that if Ippo continues this, then he'll eventually develop some amazing muscles. And fast forward to later on, Gramps is checking out Ippo's legs, confirming that he's officially completed the groundwork for this new punch. So as Ippo goes up to the heavy bag, Gramps is telling him to back up a little bit and then back up some more. He's got to get real far for this punch to make sense. Ippo knows he's out of distance for a hook or like a short uppercut, so he's realizing it must be a straight punch, but that's not exactly the case. Gramps tells him to get into a hook pose and keep his left arm at about a 90-degree angle and then give a solid punch from below. Ippo's practicing the movements and realizing that he's got it down, but as he throws it, he completely misses. Gramps tells him that he's got to step in real hard as if he was gonna leap. He sticks his cane out to the side and says that Ippo has to duck underneath this without touching it. Ippo's trying to figure out the movements and get it all realized inside of his head, and once he gets it down and gets into a rhythm, Gramps tells him to come on. As Ippo steps in, ducking underneath the cane, he was able to step far enough in that leaping motion and launches himself into the heavy bag as he sends it flying with vertical momentum, realizing that he just went airborne. As everybody's looking on, Gramps is sure that this is the punch. Ippo and the rest of the gang are shocked at the punch that he just unleashed, and Gramps is explaining that when you're attacking from below, you get a different type of destructive power that utilizes the spring of your jump. This was the entire reason that he had Ippo doing squats, and we're starting to see that that work is paying off. Even Ippo's amazed at this punch, but Gramps says it's not perfect yet. He saw a little bit of the raw power that this punch has the potential to unlock, explaining that this was the lethal weapon of Floyd Patterson, infamous fighter who held the world heavyweight belt twice. This punch that Patterson deemed the Gazelle punch. Ippo's surprised by the power, but is wondering if with this big motion, will he even be able to land a punch like this? Gramps is 100% sure that it's possible and breaks down how the fight versus Volg is going to end up going. He gets up real close in Ippo's face, saying that it's going to turn into a close range barrage of punches, and he has Ippo start punching, simulating as if he was in a barrage with Gramps. As he's going on, Gramps is telling him to go faster and faster, and the second that Ippo gives out and runs out of breath, Gramps moves in for that punch of his own. He's explaining that a barrage is pretty much a series of punches where you don't have an opportunity to take a breath. So the one key factor to how this is going to play out is each individual fighter's endurance. He tells him that as soon as Volg runs out of breath and falters back, he has to hit him with the Gazelle punch, as that is the prime condition. Immediately, he starts with Ippo doing his road work because he wants to get Ippo up to a point where he can do 3 minutes of straight punching without a hitch. As Aoki and Kimura look on, Unk says that he has doubts about Gramps' plan for Ippo. Aoki doesn't know what's up, but Unk points out that apparently Volg in Russian means wolf, as they all realize that this matchup is going to be Volg, the wolf, versus Ippo, the gazelle. Regardless of how you look at it, it's not looking too hot for Ippo. Over at Ottawa Gym, which is where Volg is training, they're watching some tape on Ippo and he's impressed with his overall fighting spirit and physical ability, but Volg says there's zero chance that he can win. Remuda is saying that while he does have good physical and fighting attributes, his most impressive feat is his ability to improve with every fight. Ever since he debuted, he's gotten better and better against each opponent, so it's likely that he'll come into this one with even more improvements. Remuda's giving all of that credit to Kamogawa, the trainer, as he says he's got great boxing theory, so he's able to lead him into the right direction, and Remuda says that undoubtedly they will come up with some type of breakthrough for this match. So he's telling Volg to move with caution. As Remuda leaves, Volg is watching through to the end of the fight and says that there's one more thing about Ippo that stands out to him above everything else. It has nothing to do with his punches or his ability to improve or fighting theory, none of that. It's actually the look on his face. He says that it looks like Ippo's having fun when he boxes. He must really love it, unlike himself. Finally, we get around to the training montage of Ippo and Gramps doing their thing. He has them doing sprinting, punching, squats, core training, as he's yelling at Ippo, saying that he's never going to win against Volg if his body is in such a weak state. He has him pushing versus Aoki and Kimura combined, and when he finishes, he hits him on the back of the head, saying that he's not doing it good enough. He needs to be more intimidating, you gotta use more strength and reach Volg on a level beyond boxing. Just using technique isn't gonna let you win. They're going at it over and over, and by the end of Ippo's day, he can barely even walk. He's there with Aoki and Kimura, and they've been seeing how crazy Gramps has been acting, as Kimura theorizes that Gramps might be going a little bit overboard since he personally felt attacked by Remuda. He tells Ippo to be careful because there's a lot of cases where fighters can't perform at their best because they overwork. And as Ippo goes back home, he's trying to massage his muscles down to reduce the swelling, but not even that is working anymore. He had assumed that it'd be okay if he just blindly followed Gramps' instruction because that always worked out for him. But now he's really considering that he might be overworked. Suddenly, he hears somebody knocking on the door, and as he makes his way there, we see it's Dr. Yamaguchi. She gives him a big hug and is saying that he's been doing well with his fights. She's been watching along and seeing all the progress he's been making. She's wondering if he's here home alone, and he explains that his mom had went out to night fishing but invites her in. She says if it's possible, she'd prefer to be taken to a room with a bed. Ippo's a little bit confused, but he takes her to a room as she wanted, and she begins making the bed. She goes ahead and tells him to lay down, saying that it's time to get started. Ippo's mad flustered at this point. He don't know what's going on. He's just got this crazy look on his face. And as she's taking off her jacket, she's telling him to hurry up. He gets onto the bed, and I don't know what Ippo was on right here. I know what he was thinking, but this form is crazy. But she tells him to stop being dumb and to turn around onto his stomach. She's here to give him a professional massage. Turns out Kamogawa had asked her to go and check up on Ippo, and as she's feeling his muscles, she says that they're definitely on the verge of being overworked. But she can tell that thanks to Kamogawa's methods, they're now filled with oxygen. They're developing extremely well. Due to all the dashing and squats and all the work that he's been putting in, his muscles are much more springy now, so his punching power has effectively increased, but also his defense power. The more spring that he has, the more he's able to absorb the impact from punches, so he's improving on both ends. Of course, this is all thanks to Kamogawa's methods. She's pointing out that all of his workouts and training routines are technically sound as well as firmly based in science. She says that as long as she's able to remove his fatigue properly, he'll be able to go into the ring in his very best condition. Back over at the gym, Gramps is in his office worried about Ippo and realizes that there was just too many things that he would have to techno technically in order to get him up on par with Volg. So instead, with such a short timeline, he decided to take the mental approach. He's enforcing this willpower and spirit on the Ippo, and he's responded fully by following all of his training, but with Ippo putting that much faith into him, it's naturally making Gramps nervous. If Ippo ends up losing, Gramps knows that a good part of that would be on him. He's beginning to worry that he's pushed Ippo a little bit too hard, but Yagi says that's not the case. Time and time again, with everybody that Gramps has ever trained, they've responded greatly, and nobody trains under him against their will. And as proof of that, you can just look at the gang from the gym. Everybody loves to box, and part of that is because of Gramps and his training. The next morning, Gramps is outside waiting on his little moped, and after some time, Ippo finally runs up. He's saying that after Dr. Yamaguchi's massage and a good night's worth of rest, his body is feeling back to 100%. As they continue their training, we fast forward to a few days later, and Ippo's watching one of Date's fight. Date had won with ease against his next challenger, and while Ippo's relieved that Date didn't lose, he understands the gap between them two right now. He still needs to train and get a lot better. Suddenly, of all people, Volg pops out from the side. He's asking Ippo for some help. He's fumbling all over his words. He doesn't seem to necessarily be the best at speaking Japanese, and recognizing this, Ippo knows that he's lost and offers to buy a train ticket for him. Realizing Ippo's kindness, Volg says that Ippo's exactly as he had imagined him. He's asking if Ippo will come and have a chat with them, saying that they're opponents in the ring, but now it shouldn't be a problem if they talk. As they sit down, Ippo doesn't really know what to talk about, as he just brings up the weather like, it's getting pretty cold, isn't it? Volg is wondering if this is technically cold for Japan. Ippo says, yeah, it's gonna be winter soon, so the temperature's been dropping rapidly. But Volg says to him that this is considered warm back in his homeland of Russia. Down there, it can get to below -20 degrees, so this really isn't too bad for him. He's explaining that around winter time, everything there just becomes huge piles of snow, and all you can hear is the storms and the late night howling of the wolves. But he realized he got sidetracked. That's not what he wanted to talk about. He actually said that coming into this, he knew that if he had ever met Ippo before the fight, he wanted to ask him something that's been on his mind. He says that as he watched Ippo's fights over and over, he wants to know if Ippo truly likes boxing. Ippo responds with, yes, he does like boxing. He loves it. But seeing Volg's face, it doesn't seem like it's the same for him. Volg explains that as boxers, their punches are fatal blows that can be delivered in just an instant. They can be used as very lethal weapons. He says that the thought of that honestly scares him. So naturally, Ippo asks him why box in the first place. Volg ends up explaining that back home, his mother lives there alone. She had raised him all by herself, and in turn had ruined her health for his sake. He wants to use boxing to make enough money to go back to his country and take care of his mom. And Ippo realizes that that's why he looked so sad before. Throughout all of his fights, he's thinking about his mom back home, and he's struggling with being lonely here, knowing that his mom is alone back home, and being in an uncomfortable place. Of course, Russia is really where he wants to be. But Volg tells Ippo not to worry about it. He wants to make sure that they both fight at their full power because he doesn't want any pity. But he locks in for a second, warning Ippo that he must be prepared to lose this next fight because Volg has no option but to win. Ippo just says that he'll try his best and ends up making his leave, and as he runs off, he's thinking about his own mother. In the last video, we had gotten some insight about Ippo's mom and the business and how she overworks herself so much for the sake of the business. Ippo knows that financially, through boxing, he may very well be able to help her out and relieve the burden off of her as well, so that she never gets put into a position where she has to be hospitalized and is putting her health at risk. As he gets himself a drink from the vending machine, he's wondering if he really can beat Volg or not. The next thing that we see is a bit of a training montage over at Ottawa Gym. We see Volg doing some training on this little round punching mitt, and the people off to the side are impressed that he can hit it so consistently and precisely, even though it's not an orthodox object. Bermuda tells Volg to use it, the white fang. And as Volg looks, he does this uppercut with his left, but once we see the finishing motion, it seems as if the hit came from above, from the right. This is Volg's white fang. The people on the side are pointing out that it's like an uppercut with the left and a chopping right at the same time. It's done at abnormal speeds, almost like a wild animal biting down on its prey. Over at Kamogawa Gym, Ippo's doing his stamina training, holding this barrage for 3 minutes straight. As nighttime rolls around, we see both of their POVs. Ippo wondering about Volg and remembering his backstory, and Volg just looking at a picture of him and his mother, getting flashbacks to her back home. Finally, we fast forward to the day of the match. The finals for the featherweight A-class tournament. We get to hear the commentators saying a little bit of stuff about it, but turns out they got 2 guest commentators said to be the 2 most powerful Japanese fighters in the country. We see Date and Unk. We see Date is keeping it classy with a regular formal suit, but Unk got this sparkly ass fit on. He's acting crazy now that he got this little segment on TV. As the interviewer is talking with Date, he's saying that it can really go either way. He's not sure who's gonna win, but Unk's saying that's boring. He makes his official statement as he's taking the underdog, Ippo, to win via knockout. And Date saying that is very likely. Even though he is the underdog, boxing is just so unpredictable. But Unk's just going in on them, saying that old people just make the most boringest statements. He's going on and on about Date and is cutting him off whenever he tries to respond, and they end up getting mad at each other, starting to scream, and they make a bet. Date's got his money on Volg, and Unk got his money on Ippo. Finally, we get a look at the fighters in their corners with their respective coaches. Remuda is looking back at Gramps, saying that he can't wait to see how far Japan's focus on effort and willpower is going to hold up against his fighter, Volg. Not only is this of course a fight between Ippo and Volg, but this is the first time that we get to see the trainer dynamic of a fight between Remuda and Gramps. As the seconds leave, Ippo's trying to start being intimidating and get in that mode for the fight, but he says that something's off. As he looks at Volg, he looks like a completely different person than what he was before, and can just feel the overall pressure coming from Volg, and it's making him nervous. Ippo just can't seem to shake off the nerves, and Volg just looks at him, saying that he's sorry. He says maybe if they had met in another lifetime, they could have been friends. Finally, the finals for the A-class featherweight tournament begins. Both fighters slowly walk towards the middle, and Ippo goes straight into his peekaboo style. Volg, on the other hand, goes into crouching style. When Gramps sees this, he realizes that Volg's starting to make his move, so he tells Ippo to make one first, but as he tries, Volg is able to rush in first and taking the initiative. They're trading a bunch of left blows, but nothing's popped off too crazy yet. Aoki and Kimura are in the crowd and are impressed that Ippo's actually seeming to keep up with them, being the amateur world champion. Gramps is telling him that he's doing a good job and lets him know to go in so that he can get into a range where he's comfortable. But Remuda in the other corner is saying that's not going to happen. As Ippo tries to make his way in, Volg changes up his own rhythm in order to mix up Ippo's timing and hits him with a little short right uppercut to launch him back. As Ippo realizes that Volg is going to go for another hit and ultimately lead into a barrage, he puts his block up, but instead of a jab like he's been throwing the entire round, Volg threw another uppercut, which was enough to make Ippo start to falter. Volg sees his chance with Ippo up against the rope and rushes in once again, but Ippo balls up, going into complete defense mode. Volg is filling it out, trying to make his way in, and ends up launching a third uppercut, completely breaking Ippo's guard, and Unk points out that the arm block, which Ippo was trying, is weak to attacks against below. Volg had seen that and took advantage. Volg throws a wide left but completely misses as Ippo sees his chance to get away from the ropes, but Volg is sticking with him, keeping the pressure applied and not letting Ippo get away. As Ippo takes more and more hits, it's beginning to feel like escaping Volg is impossible. Even in the corner, Gramps is admitting that Volg is strong, but for some reason, he knows that Ippo hasn't really been able to get started yet. He's wondering if he's scared. Over in Volg's corner, Remuda is saying that it's only natural for effort and willpower to take them so far, so this was bound to happen. He's very set on his own ideology and how his fighter is going to win through his methods, so all of Ippo's mistakes and misplays, he's counting to Gramps and the overall Japanese style of training and culture around boxing. In the ring, Volg is able to make a clear opening with the right and beams Ippo straight in the face with his left. Just from this one punch, everybody realizes that Ippo's head has been shaken and it looks like he's got a concussion. Remuda realizes that this is the perfect time to crush him, and Volg is on the same timing. He backsteps in order to make proper space for his next punch, but as he sends it out, it's intercepted by Ippo throwing it right. He leads into this barrage and Yagi's realizing that he snapped right back into his senses. His form is exactly how it was when he was training, but Gramps realizes that he's already unconscious. Volg is just trying his best to defend against all of this pressure when Ippo is able to throw a heavy right and send him across the ring, finally making some space and setting things back to 0 as the crowd really starts getting into it. They're all rooting for Ippo since he's the hometown hero, and as Ippo finally wakes back up, he doesn't even know what just happened. He's wondering why Volg is so far away, but realizes that they must have exchanged blows when he blacked out, so they're on even footing. As he takes a look around the ring, he realizes that things feel like they're back to normal. He's finally been able to shake off the nerves and jitters that he was feeling before the match, as he's been able to experience some of Volg's punches and make it out the other side. In Volg's head, he's trying to calm back down after experiencing that barrage, as he says that he's never fought against somebody with such power. He says that if it's possible, he wants to put Ippo to sleep quickly before things get a chance to get out of hand. He runs towards Ippo and Ippo runs right back. They start exchanging punches back and forth as they're both in their ideal range. Date knows that whoever wins this interaction will start to gain momentum and advantage throughout the rest of the fight. Gramps is hyping Ippo up in the crowd, but Ramuda says this was all expected. They didn't expect Ippo to go down in one easy blow, and they know how tough and resilient he can be. This is all going according to plan. They're throwing heavy punches back and forth with a right from Volg, then a body blow from Ippo, even landing left hits at the same time when they both follow up with rushing in to land a heavy right, but the bell rings as the first round is over. Ippo had almost let it get away from him, but after regaining consciousness and shaking off the nerves, he was able to get back into it, and as Volg is in the corner with his trainers, Ramuda is asking him if he needs any advice after round 1. Volg is just talking about Ippo, saying that he's an incredible athlete with amazing power, pointing out that 3 minutes in the first round just wasn't enough time to take him down. At first, he says it would be possible to gather points and use his outboxing to win technically, but he knows that if he backs up at all and retreats, Ippo's gonna rush right in, and that might let him get into his rhythm, which they want to avoid. So Volg's strategy is to beat him at his own game in fighting. Doing so should weaken him mentally. The coach agrees to all of the points that he made and just warns Volg to exercise caution when dealing with Ippo's punch. It truly is powerful, and as soon as he sees the opportunity, he tells Volg to bite him and crush him. Over in Ippo's corner, he's of course giving Volg his props, especially from the beginning of the round where he recalls how easily it had gotten away from him. At first, the pressure was a little bit too much for him to handle, but once he was able to get a grip back on things, he realized that there's no way to go but forward. Gramps is telling him that he did a good job in the last round, telling him to keep on lashing out and don't be afraid to get hit. As Ippo agrees, the seconds leave and the second round begins. Volg is thinking about what his trainer said to quote-unquote bite him and crush him, of course referring to his White Fang, his signature punch, but Volg says if it's possible, he'd prefer not to use it. The White Fang delivers blows to the brain from both above and below. He says that not only can it end the match, but it can very well end his opponent's life as a boxer. Out of respect for Ippo and being able to meet him before, seeing what kind of fighter and person he is, Volg doesn't want to do it. As they get back to fighting, Volg gets back to landing another uppercut and continues his barrage, punching over and over. But as soon as it looked like Ippo's resolve was about to weaken, he bounces right back and delivers a barrage of his own. The announcers realize that Ippo's taking more and more punches, and Date calls out that it's just due to Volg having more skill than him. Ippo's defenses aren't good enough to keep up with Volg's offense, and on top of that, Volg's defenses are good enough to keep up with Ippo's counters and his attempts to try and get back into it. Over in Volg's corner, Ramuda is honestly impressed. He says that no fighter has ever lasted this long in a ring with one of his boxers, but as the rounds go on, the skill gap is going to become more and more apparent, so he's still not worried. Though in the ring, Ippo's weaknesses are really starting to show, as they're still going at it. Volg is impressed by Ippo's endurance. Through every punch that he's taken, he's continuing to put in the effort and bounce back, as he realizes that the average boxer or even a regular above average boxer would have fell a long time ago. While in Ippo's head, he knows that he just can't stop. He has to keep on punching, keep on moving his arms, keep going, and keep that rhythm that he's been trying to establish or else he's gonna fall far behind to the point where he won't be able to recover. As Volg sends a punch, he's praying that Ippo falls quickly. He doesn't want him to take too much damage and truly impact his career, but finally, he misses a right and Ippo perfectly ducks underneath, loading up his Gazelle punch. And as he sends it leaping into the air, he sends Volg flying back, but just barely knocking him down. Remuda realizes that Kamogawa was hiding this secret weapon of his. Everybody in the crowd is going crazy, of course, alongside Chief and the rest of the gang. And as Ippo's back in his neutral corner, Volg is realizing that that was the Gazelle punch. He knows that that's not a punch you can learn overnight and is impressed with Ippo's dedication to specialized training in order for this specific fight. Yagi personally thinks that Volg isn't going to be able to get back up, but Gramps saw a little bit of flaw in Ippo's technique. He says that it's likely due to damage from the fight, but he didn't get low enough and couldn't brace his legs enough in order to get the proper amount of power. And thanks to his reflexes, Volg, just before the punch, was able to grasp Ippo's fists with his own, weakening the destructive power. So even though Ippo was able to land the Gazelle punch, he knows that Volg is going to be able to stand back up. Over in Volg's corner, Remuda is thinking about him and says that he's a boxer with extremely great talent, but he has one fatal flaw. He says that Volg is too nice. When he gets into the ring, he ends up hitting his opponent, and he says that a trait like that is detrimental to a professional boxer. He says that Volg must realize it now, that pity can't be used inside of the ring. If he pities his opponent, then his opponent is going to take advantage of it and turn that back around on him. Boxing is a win or lose game. If you hold back on your opponent, then all you'll ever know is defeat. At this point, Volg is back on 2 and the ref calls out for the round to continue. Ippo dashes in, desperate for an opportunity to win the match, but Gramps is telling him to take his time a little bit and not rush in too recklessly. While at the same time, Remuda realizes that Ippo's getting desperate. He knows that Volg is going to lead him into his trap. As Ippo connects some blows, Volg is still able to move around and dodge most of them. Gramps is realizing that Volg does still have some leftover energy and has no plans of wearing out. He's telling Ippo that he has to be cautious because Volg must be planning something, as Ippo gets pushed back a little bit, but he's still determined to keep on going. But at this point, Gramps is noticing that Volg has nearly recuperated from the fall already, and Ippo's been expending all of his energy for the slightest chance of an opening, but by playing the long game, the tables are starting to turn in Volg's favor. Regardless, Ippo finds another opening for the Gazelle punch, but as he goes for it, Volg easily blocks it, saying that I've seen you use this punch before, and I'm not gonna let it hit me again. As he retaliates with a little barrage of his own, Ippo is realizing that the punches are sharper than before. Remuda is saying that the hunt has now begun. Volg is starting to throw out all of these punches and Ippo is stuck on the defense. He lands a hook with his left and follows up with the uppercut from his right as Ippo is doing his best to block it. He feels the contact from the uppercut but realizes that he doesn't have enough energy to fully brace it, but then out of nowhere, he gets hit with the overhead left from Volg. As he falls straight to the ground, Volg walks back into his corner, but Ippo doesn't even know what just happened. At one moment, it was an uppercut, but then suddenly, he lost track of everything. As the ref starts counting up, Ippo quickly stands, but falls right back. His legs are unstable, and at this point, he's in his corner trying to use the ropes as best he can to get back onto his feet. By the time that the ref gets up to 7, Ippo manages to make his way over there and says that he could still fight. He's definitely taking some damage, but the ref deems that it's okay and calls for the fight to continue. But right after, the round ends and they go back to their respective sides. Remuda's looking back at Ippo, realizing that he's begun to panic, but he says that only makes sense. His knockdown on Volg was by surprise, but Volg's in retaliation was much more intense and really showed off their skill gap. As he focuses back on Volg, he gives him another warning. He tells him that the reason that he got knocked down wasn't on accident. It was because he lacked caution. He says that if you don't get Ippo, he's gonna get you. Ippo already knows that. You gotta realize it now. Volg says that he does realize it, thinking back to when Ippo had gotten knocked down. He's gonna keep swinging as long as he's still conscious. He needs to both sever his consciousness and his willpower entirely. Thinking back to his mom in Russia, he says that he will definitely defeat him no matter what. Back in Ippo's corner, Gramps is explaining the punch that he had just taken. It was a simultaneous punch from both below and above. He compares it to the jaws of a wolf clenching in on his prey, saying that even if you stop the lower jaw, you'll be attacked from above. That is Volg's finishing blow, the White Fang. Ippo asks him what he should do, but Gramps is just staying silent. Yagi's realizing that he's worried, and as they kick the seconds out, he looks back at Ippo and tells him, "Do your best." Yagi can't believe that's all that he said to him. He didn't give any proper instruction. Kamogawa was all about technique and form and strategies based in science, but "do your best" was the best that he could say. He's wondering if that's really okay that that's all he says to Ippo, but Gramps says there's 100 different meanings to those 3 words, saying that if Ippo can even understand 10 of them, then it might just make the difference inside the ring. Volg is looking at Ippo and is realizing that he's tired, but he knows that's not going to be enough to stop him. As long as he's conscious, he's going to keep on swinging, he's going to keep getting back up, so Volg has to put him down. As the round begins, the commentators call out that Volg seems to have completely recovered from his knockdown, but Ippo's moves are real sluggish. As Volg decides to make his move and rush in, instead of running away, Ippo stands his ground. In Ippo's mind, we get to hear that he knows he's not skilled enough to dodge Volg's punches for a full 3 minutes when he thinks back to what Coach said, "Do your best." He took it as he should do his best in following what they had practiced. He needs to rely on Coach's training, and that's what's going to help him see it through. Coach is thinking to himself that Ippo needs to do his best to continue and preserve, and eventually he's going to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Ippo decided to put his full faith in Coach since it's worked out every time before, so why switch up now? He completely abandons his guard, moving both of his arms out to the side, and as Volg rushes in, Ippo barely dodges, but Volg is in good position to follow up. As he does, Ippo's getting flashbacks to his training with Gramps. They're starting to exchange punches back and forth, and this is what Ippo does best. But Aoki and Kimura are realizing that he's getting outpunched even at his own game. Remember, this is exactly what Volg had wanted to do after the first round, beat him at his own game, weaken him mentally, and this is how he's gonna get his willpower to deteriorate. Date in his head is thinking that Ippo should focus on defense so that he can recuperate with what he can, but Ippo's putting it all on the line right here. Shortly after beginning to exchange blows, Volg is completely taking the advantage. Ippo's moves are getting slower and slower while Volg is maintaining consistency. He's comboing Ippo up crazy at this point. He ends up throwing a left to create a prime opening for his finishing blow, but the ref intervenes saying that Ippo is down. He sends Volg back to his neutral corner as the ref begins to count up. Ippo is able to lock back in and tell the ref that he can continue going, but first, the ref gotta ask him a couple questions. He's asking him his name, if he knows where he's at, what he's doing, and Ippo responds correctly to all of them, so the ref deems that Ippo is still fully conscious and seems like he's willing to fight. So, he calls for the fight to continue. Volg knows that there's 2 minutes remaining, and that's plenty of time to knock Ippo out. So he rushes back in, and they're right back where they started. He goes back in for his White Fang, sending the uppercut, but before he can even follow up with that chopping right, Ippo falls once again. Things are looking worse and worse for Ippo, and Yagi is telling Gramps that we can't have him fighting out here on pure instinct alone. He clearly doesn't have his head fully there. He wants Gramps to throw in the towel, but Gramps says when he told him to do his best, Ippo heard him and responded to him loud and clear. He's recalling back to every situation in which they've been like this, and he's pulled through every single time. He always goes on with the most difficult training regimens and never gives up inside the ring. Ippo, getting flashbacks to his training, is just repeating everything that Gramps has been telling him. As he stands back up, the ref is looking at him in his eye, and as Ippo goes into a fighting pose, he knows he's still conscious, but the ref is worried about all the damage that he's taking. Finally, he decides that he still has fight left in him, so the ref lets the match continue. But at this point, Ippo already has 2 downs in this round alone, so the next one is going to be an instant disqualification. Volg is realizing that Ippo didn't fall out of weakness from that first punch. He merely saved energy by not having to take the damage from the heavier second attack. So he's still got more fight in him than if he would have tried to stay up and not fall from the first. But Volg knows that he only needs one more knockdown to win, so he rushes back in. Ippo's just watching him real closely. He's imagining Gramps and all the mid-punching exercises that they were doing and responds with the hook before Volg could even realize it. He's surprised that Ippo still has this much energy to retaliate, but Gramps notices that Ippo didn't step in far enough on that punch, so he wasn't able to do enough damage. Ippo is still thinking about Gramps, and at this point, he's hearing his voice. He's hearing all the things that he would say during their training, and Volg is amazed that Ippo still has all of his strength. Ippo is on complete go mode. He's putting his endurance training to the absolute max, and Gramps couldn't be more proud. Remuda, on the other hand, knows that Volg just has to stay calm. He says that this is Ippo's last desperate attempt at trying to secure a win, so all Volg has to do is make it past this little burst, and Ippo is sure to gas out. Eventually, inside the ring, it actually seems as if that's what's happening. There's 5 seconds left on the clock, and continuously, Volg is gaining momentum, but when the bell finally rings, Gramps swoops in and stops Volg from continuing. As the third round is over, Ippo is back in his corner and Gramps is telling him not to talk in order to reserve his energy, but he's telling Ippo that he's done great so far. He was in the ring doing his moves just like they had practiced, and he's thinking to himself that Ippo's perseverance and strength makes this job as a trainer so much easier. If he tells Ippo to do something, he's 100% sure he's gonna do it. Ippo just says, "It's amazing." And Gramps is like, "Yeah, Volg is amazing. His strength is no joke. He didn't become the amateur world champion for nothing." But Ippo wasn't talking about Volg, he was talking about Gramps. Ippo's explaining that nothing had made sense for the first few parts of the fight, so he had just relied on doing the mid-punching just as him and Gramps had practiced, and suddenly, punches had started to connect. He says that Gramps really does know everything. Over in Volg's corner, he's stressing out, just wondering why Ippo is still standing. He knows that he's delivered all types of fatal blows that would have knocked out anybody else. Remuda is saying that it's because of the spring in his knees. He's able to absorb these powerful blows and eventually escape from them still standing. He's giving Kamogawa props on his ability to train his fighters, but Remuda had his own plan to counter this. Volg's gotta hit Ippo with body blows so that the damage starts to settle in his lower body. Only then will he be able to deliver a blow powerful enough that even Ippo wouldn't be able to recover from. He's telling Volg to make sure to go in with a clear mind. Since Ippo doesn't have any more tricks to show, the match is still in Volg's favor. The only way that he'll lose is if he lets things get out of control. As they kick the seconds out, the 4th round begins and Volg starts with straight body blows, just as his trainer had told him. He completely switched up the strategy from what he was doing in the first 3 rounds, and Ippo wasn't prepared for it, nor was he even in the condition to begin absorbing all of these hits. He's just punching and punching as Ippo tries to counter swing, but Volg easily dodges it, continuing with his barrage. We get a view of inside Remuda's mind as he's beginning to talk about Volg. During this most recent intermission, his breathing was staggered and he couldn't catch it fully, and he says that as far as he can remember, this is the first time that that's ever happened. He's honestly giving Kamogawa props, saying that Ippo is truly amazing, and a big part of that is the trainer himself. He says that only if they had a couple more years of experience together, then he wouldn't even know how this fight would end up, as he begins to go into a flashback to 10 years ago when he had first met Volg. He had seen all types of athletes from Russia who were trying to make an impact on the world stage, but was never impressed with anybody until he met Volg. He was still mad young at this point, but he was punching on a heavy bag, and as they make eye contact, he tells Remuda that he wants to be strong one day because he has somebody that he must protect. Remuda was just thankful for the opportunity to encounter somebody with such talent. It doesn't come around this often. And he says that as a trainer, there's no greater joy than being able to train somebody with said talent. From then on, he had devoted himself to bringing out and refining Volg as a fighter. He says that Volg is his greatest masterpiece, his life's work. We fast forward to back into the ring as he's still going at it with these body blows when Ippo's heels finally touch the ground. Now that he's flat-footed, his spring from his knees are completely canceled out, and Volg has the opportunity to go in for one of his finishing blows, so he does just that. He rushes in and starts aiming for the face, just how he was in the first 3 rounds, and Ippo can't do anything but hold his guard up. Gramps is watching this go down and is just praying that Ippo is able to persevere. but Yagi's in his ear saying that it's only a matter of time before Ippo's guard is pried open. Persevering and sticking this fight out is just a downhill battle. It's not a fair fight anymore. But as Gramps looks at Ippo, he says that he still has a weapon left. He goes back to when he had first met Ippo. He says that if he was just somebody with some destructive power, it wouldn't have really mattered to him. He wouldn't have really taken any interest. But even though he was a quote-unquote sorry excuse for a boxer, Ippo had showed him something that he had never seen before. Ippo's weapon is his ability to continue fighting and never lose heart, never withdrawing from a match. The ability to get up and keep fighting as many times as it takes. Ippo's weapon is his courage. Gramps says that courage is a weapon that not even the most excellent trainer could teach his fighter, no matter how long they work together. And as in the ring, Volg finally breaks Ippo's guard. He stops Volg from sending in his finishing punch by throwing out a body blow when Volg retaliates with a right, and at this point, Ippo can't even feel his feet, but he knows that he just has to continue on punching. He's going on, throwing as much of a barrage as he really can while his back is up to the rope, and the crowd is still running for Ippo and they're cheering him on. But Volg lands another right as Ippo starts to fall forward. But he ends up leaning on Volg and is still trying his best to lash out. Ippo's just thinking to himself in his head, knowing that if he can continue to persevere and lash out and keep on punching, then there's gotta be something for him. He knows that Gramps sees it at the end of the tunnel, so he's just completely believing in his vision and his theories. All Ippo is doing is focusing on trying to put his best in and work through the pain until he sees what Gramps could see. He takes a body blow from Volg, which starts his own barrage, and the commentators are calling out that through this back and forth of offense and defense, while Ippo's been up against the rope, his defenses are getting weaker and weaker. But he's continuing to persist, while Volg, on the other hand, is trying his best to finish him off one way or another. Ippo's telling himself that he can still move, he can still punch, and he's just trying his best, giving it all to do exactly that. And Volg can't believe how stubborn Ippo is with his fighting style. He's never seen somebody fight like this, and is just wondering what he's expecting out of a fight like this. He says that Ippo's in a quote-unquote half-dead state like this. Surely there's nothing good that could come out of it, when finally Volg manages to connect with the right, and after this one, Ippo's body completely stops moving. Volg recognizes the opportunity, seeing that Ippo can't move anymore, and on his side, Ippo is succumbing to this moment of weakness. He feels the pain from the punch and doesn't think he's going to be able to recover from this one. As Volg rushes in, he's relieved that this is all finally over, but suddenly we see something happen with his legs, and Volg misses the punch. The commentator calls out how his upper body is completely off balance and not even Volg knows what's going on. He's starting to realize that his body feels mad heavy and he's never experienced something like this before. Suddenly, Gramps says, "This is it. It's finally here." He tells Ippo to clench his fists, and if he could do that, then take them and throw it into Volg as hard as he can. With just this slight moment to recuperate, Ippo snaps back into it and does exactly that. He hits Volg with the right, making him lean all the way back, but he's not out of it for too long. He gets it back together, going to intercept Ippo's next punch, but he gets hit first. Inside of his mind, Volg is calling out all the correct moves to do, but his body isn't quick enough to keep up with it. He's taking all these hits from Ippo, and Remuda doesn't know what's going on, but Gramps says that Volg finally ran out of stamina. It's almost as if Remuda and Gramps are having a conversation with each other, because Remuda comes to the same conclusion at the exact same time, wondering how Volg could have ran out of stamina in only 4 rounds. But Gramps is explaining that since this isn't amateur boxing, they don't have pads and headgear to protect them. You run out of stamina way faster in a professional ring than you do in an amateur fight, and since Volg has never been pushed this far in a professional fight, they didn't know where his stamina limit was at. He was always able to end rounds early because of his amazing offensive power, but since Ippo was able to persevere and make it this far, he's finally getting rewarded. As Ippo's continuing to put on pressure, Volg is trying his best to stay up, but all he can think about is how strange his body feels right now. Over with the commentators, Date is calling out that both of their punches have pretty much slowed down to the same speed. The thing that's going to turn the titles of this match is their finishing blows. The Gazelle punch versus the White Fang. Whoever can manage to get that off might just have the best chance at victory. But Unk knows that Ippo's Gazelle punch has already been countered, and it's not likely that Volg is going to get hit by the same punch that he's already figured out. Ippo is realizing that Volg isn't at his best and knows that if he's able to land a big punch right now, then Volg would go down for sure. But Volg knows that's exactly what Ippo's thinking, as he can tell that he's in this punched over position, predicting that Ippo's gonna go for his Gazelle punch. He comes to the conclusion that he has no reason to fight in a state like this, so he's gonna let Ippo do his Gazelle punch since he already knows how to counter it. He's planning on waiting it out and finishing Ippo with the white fang, so he does exactly that. He sends a wide right as Ippo ducks over and Gramps is yelling at him saying that not yet, it's too soon. Finally, Ippo realizes that he was set up. He can tell that Volg is waiting to counter him, but he's already started the motion from the punch and his momentum isn't letting him stop. He's in the middle of sending this punch, panicking more and more, but finally shifts his front foot instead of leaping and ducks even lower to connect with the body blow. He was still able to get some of that upwards momentum, but landed the punch in a completely different place. He was able to completely throw Volg off and launch him up into the air. Over with Remuda, he recognized exactly what Ippo just did and says that this is probably the worst type of punch that Volg could have taken. Over in Ippo's corner, Gramps and Yaki are happy as hell. Ippo had managed to pull something out of his bag right before it looked like he was about to lose, as inside the ring, they're both exhausted. Volg is still reeling from the pain, and Ippo follows up with not one, not two, not even three, but 4 punches, finally sending Volg down to the ground. In the stadium, the crowd is going crazy, Aoki and Kimura are going crazy, and of course, Yagi and Gramps are hyped. Gramps is happy that he had put full faith in his boxer, and his boxer had put full faith into him. He's giving props to Remuda, saying that Volg truly is an amazing fighter. But in the light of such amazing talent, Gramps says it's easy to miss the shadows. Remuda comes to the realization that this is completely on him. Volg's fighting ability is much greater than Ippo's. He's got more experience, he's got more technique, his finishing move is easily enough to take him down, but he's losing right now because Remuda failed as a trainer. He hasn't taught Volg what to do in situations like this, and Volg has never had to regain his footing after being taken down. Remuda is just shocked that his fighter is really about to lose. Suddenly, Volg is able to lift his chest off the mat. He begins lifting his knee one at a time and just tries to stay balanced, but he falls right back down. Ippo is hoping that he doesn't get back up, and as Volg just looks up at Ippo, he's mentally out of it. He's saying that at this point, he can't stand anymore. He just looks down, thinking about his mom, as we get flashbacks to Volg and his time in Russia. He had always tried his best to make things work for him and his mom, but being so young, he just couldn't get much done. One night, in the middle of his struggles, he's seen a lone wolf just howling, and he recalls wishing that he were as strong as said wolf, strong enough to be able to protect his mother. He says that as a young boy, he was so impressed by that wolf and he had picked up boxing just because of it. He's thinking that if he isn't able to stand up now, then he'll be the exact same that he was so long ago, still powerless. He clenches his fist, realizing that he's done this for the past 10 years in order to become strong, as he says that he was weak when he started, but now things are different. No matter how many times he gets knocked down, he's got the strength to get back up and continue. As he stands up, everybody is surprised and the ref calls for the fight to continue. Date is impressed with Volg's fighting spirit, as in the ring, Ippo knows that he can't let this opportunity get past him. The commentator calls out Ippo's barrage as Volg just holds up his guard. He's up against the rope and Volg ends up clinching, but Ippo's not even able to deliver any blows while they're close up together, since he's also almost out of stamina. The ref breaks it up and the commentator's calling out that at this point, they're both desperate for a win. This time, Volg is the first one to make a move, but his jabs, which were once lightning fast, are now much slower. Gramps is looking up at the clock, realizing that there's only a few seconds left, yelling at Ippo to lash out with everything that he has, and as he does just that, he's able to make an opening. But right before his finishing blow lands, the ref intervenes as the 4th round is over. But as Ippo's walking back to his corner, he realizes that even though he was about to go for his finishing move, Volg was going through the motions for his white fang. Even though he's pretty much running on E, he's nowhere near giving up. In Volg's corner, because he ended up making a mistake that is seemingly going to cost him his first L, Remuda is upset. But as he looks into Volg's eyes, he sees that determination, that willpower to continue fighting and to win. Volg asks Remuda to instruct him, teach him how he can win this fight. And as we skip forward to seeing the seconds get it kicked out, each trainer is telling their fighter to go out there and give it their all as the round begins. This is completely uncharacteristic of Remuda. He's never taught like this before, but that's honestly the best that he could say. Yagi is on the outside saying that he's impressed with Gramps' ability to foresee what was going to happen in this fight. Originally, Gramps had predicted that it would turn out into a close range brawl where they both had to run out of stamina, but he actually corrects Yagi, saying that he was wrong. According to his calculations and predictions, he had thought this was going to end in round 4. He never believed for a second that Volg was going to be able to get back up, as he asked Yagi for the towel. He's pointing out that while things were looking good, Ippo is also at his limit. From here on out, every second that this fight continues can be life-threatening. He's watching everything extremely closely, ready to call it off if things get too bad. While with Remuda, he's surprised that he's even vocalizing something to his fighter about willpower and determination, but he's thinking that maybe this should have been his first step from the very beginning. We get to see a little bit of his style of coaching slowly changing throughout the course of this fight. Inside the ring, both Ippo and Volg plant their feet as they intend to just brawl it out until one of them drops. As they both rush in, they get to infighting, and at this point, each individual fighter is just relying on what they do best. As we see them going back and forth, time begins to slow down a little bit. Volg is beginning to realize this, and he wonders just how much time has actually passed. He says it feels like they've been punching for hours, while over on Ippo's side, he doesn't even feel anything anymore. He doesn't know if he's hitting his punches or even if he's getting hit. He's out there just trying his best to rely on his muscle memory. While Volg is having his own mental struggles, Ippo knows that Volg's drive hasn't changed at all. He knows that if he lets up for even a second, he'll be punished by Volg's fangs. We get to see that this is the exact endurance battle that Gramps had called out back at Kamogawa Gym. They're both there in the ring and running out of breath. When Volg lands a clean hit to Ippo in the face, he begins going through the motions for his white fang, using up every last ounce of his strength in order to send it out, but Ippo's able to dodge the first one and eventually the second. Remuda is just shocked that the deadly lightning fast combo is now just a mere shadow of what it used to be, and after sending that final punch, Volg can't do it any longer. He can't hold his breath. He gasps for air, and the instant that he does, Ippo steps in, planting his foot, and Volg knows that this is the Gazelle punch. As Ippo launches it, he finally connects with Volg, sending him to the ground. As Ippo manages to return to his corner, he can barely even prop himself up anymore, and Volg is just sitting there, down on one knee. Here, we get to see Volg's fighting spirit as he slowly manages to get back on two. He knows that if he can raise his hands, he can still fight. He knows that he doesn't have any strength left, but honestly, he doesn't care. He just doesn't want this fight to end. Suddenly, he comes to a realization as he says, "Mom, I think that I actually do like boxing." He just looks at Ippo when his intense face finally drops into a smile. Volg has officially exhausted all of his energy, and the winner of the featherweight A-class tournament is Ippo.